Everyone, welcome to Empire in the Air's monthly event series. Yesterday, we did go back in time and kind of reacted to our old collections. Now, today, we want to celebrate AAPI Heritage Month through this event's EmPOWER Hour, hosted by the lovely Andrea, a very creative being and film and TV enthusiast. And now I'll hand over the mic to Andrea to talk a little more about herself and start the workshop.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. It is about 8:30 a.m. for me. I believe it's around 11:30 for y'all over there. I just wanted to say thank you for inviting me to do this workshop. I've actually done this workshop in the past, and it has been one of my favorite projects I've ever done. So I'm so happy to be able to do it again. A little bit about me. I am a fourth year business MAS major at San Jose State University. I actually will be introducing more of myself. I have a slide for it, but if anything, we can just start now. But more importantly, I do encourage you to participate, whether that be out loud or in the chat box. I would really, really appreciate it, just because I don't want to be talking at you. I would love to be talking with you today. I know we all are missing a little bit of social interaction, so this is kind of like the best we can do for now. But yeah, let's get started. I'm going to go share my screen. If there are any things that are not showing properly, if you're not hearing anything, please let me know so I can make sure that everyone is seeing everything. So give me a second while I share. I'm going to present. Is everyone seeing what I am seeing? A good presentation slide? All right, cool, we can get started. So I like to call this the Misrepresentation in Media for Empire in the Air EmPOWER Hour. Some ground rules. So we do this a lot, and I just wanted to establish some ground rules right before we start. So don't yuck my yum. This is a lot of opinions, and a lot of opinions belong to a lot of different people with a lot of different backgrounds, right? So most importantly, just respect people's opinions. One thing that they may like or not like may be different from yours. So as long as we just keep it respectful, we should be good. 4 walls. What is said here is safe. No one's going to use it against you. I hope not, at least, but no one should be using what you say here against you. Sorry, that was my text. 1 mic, so if someone's talking, leave it to them, let them finish, and then we can move on to the next person to speak. And number 4, if you choose to speak, please introduce yourself beforehand. I would like to know whose voice belongs to who and who participates as well. So this is the agenda we have for today. We are going to be talking about 4 different topics. Number 1 would be early film. Number 2 would be the 2000 to the 2010 shift. Number 3 is miscasting. And number 4 is currently and where we are now within film and media. I apologize. I just realized you can see like a reflection in my glasses. Please don't notice it too much. There's like a door right in front of me. But yes. Okay, so a little bit about me. Like I said, my name is Andrea Nguyen. I'm a 4th year business MAS major. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am half Vietnamese and half Filipino. Like I said, I'm a San Jose State student, and I am also a bobarista at Urban Ritual down in San Jose. Also, since we are talking about movies and TV shows, some of my favorite movies and TV shows include Moulin Rouge, Interstellar, Grand Budapest Hotel. TV shows would be Schitt's Creek, New Girl, and most recently Shadow and Bone. So if y'all like those, please hit me up. I love talking about them. I will never get tired of talking about them. So also, if I'm talking too fast, please slow me down. I know I talk very fast. So if you misunderstand anything, if you would like for me to repeat something, don't be afraid to ask. All right, so let's get started. The first section will be early film. So early film, I like to consider to be pre-2000s, and this is when we start movies and TV shows in general. So in 1950, there was the first recorded movie that centered around Chinese culture, and this was called Madame Butterfly. I could not find a good enough clip for it, but I do have a picture on the next slide. And then in 1961, we see another popular appearance of Asian culture within Breakfast at Tiffany's. And then in 1984, we have another appearance of Asian culture and an Asian American in film. So first we'll be watching Breakfast at Tiffany's. We will discuss a little bit about it later. Like I said, please feel free to participate. If not, I will just talk because I do love talking. So this is going to be the first clip from Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Mr. Go right through. Someday, Mr. Go right through.
What happened to you anyway? You take off for the powder room, and that's the last I see you.
Now, really, Harry?
Harry was the other guy. I'm Sid Arbuck. You like me, remember?
Mr. Go right through. I protest.
Oh, darling, I am sorry, but I lost my key.
But that was 2 weeks ago. You cannot go on or keep ringing my bell. You disturb me. You must have a key made.
But it won't do any good. I just lose them all.
Come on, baby. You like me. You know you do.
I worship you, Mr. Arbuck, but good night, Mr.
Hold on,
Arbuck.
baby. Wait a minute. What is this? You like me. I'm a liked guy. You like me, baby. You know you do.
In 30 seconds, I got to call the police. All the time a disturbance. I cannot sleep. I got to get to my rest. I'm an artist.
Okay, so that's the gist of that clip, and then we'll be moving on to the second one for 16 Candles.
Very clever dinner. Appetizing food fit neatly into interesting round pie.
It's a quiche.
How do you spell?
Well, you don't spell it, son. You eat it.
Dong has only been in our country a short time, Fred. I think we could all help him assimilate.
Oh.
Long Duck Dong is about your age, Sam. You two should have a lot to chat about.
I love visiting with the grandma and the grandpa and writing letters to parents and pushing lawn mowing machines so grandpa's hyena don't get disturbed.
Hernia!
Oh, yes, indeed. He does the dishes and helps with the laundry, you betcha.
May I be excused?
Where are you going?
I have a dance to go to at school. It's a very important dance. We're being graded on it for gym.
Wait a minute. I have a wonderful idea. Would you like to go to the dance with Sam?
Cool. Okay. So I know there's some things that you may have noticed about these two particular clips, and we can talk about it in the next slide. So I will do a little bit of a background, and if you would like to answer the two questions that I have on the screen, feel free to say it out loud or to put it in the chat. So in the top left, we have Long Dung Duck. Already from the name, you can already assume like, hey, this does not sound right. Like, why would they do that? So Long Dung Duck was the only Asian character in 16 Candles. And from the way that he was portrayed, you could see like there was the Oriental gong every time he showed up on screen. The way that he held the fork and the knife, he held it like chopsticks. And so while his representation in the movie aims to provide like a comic relief, it both feminizes Asian American men and also constructs them to be like atypical and a little bit behind on social cues and very feminine. So his femininity makes him weak, and we're meant to laugh at him. And it preys on certain stereotypes that have been built upon, like Asian men being quiet, Asian men being confused about like the different ways to assimilate into American culture. In the top right corner, we have Mr. Yunoishi, who appeared in the Breakfast at Tiffany's clip. Straight from the get-go, it was wrong and bad for him to be in this particular character because one, Mickey Rooney is not Asian at all. He's actually a white actor. And so Mickey Rooney was a Caucasian man that was casted to play this clumsy and barely understandable Japanese neighbor. So in this clip, we can see him with exaggerated features that prey on Japanese stereotypes. So his buck teeth, he has squinty eyes, and a very, very strong accent. And then all of those are meant to be laughed at. So these two characters benefit off of very harmful stereotypes, and they actually wear them as costumes. But at the end of the day, they can take those costumes off, right? Maybe not so much Long Dong Duck, but definitely Mickey Rooney. And so in the long term, those consequences of the costumes they so-called wear, they affected actual Asian people. So their skin, their language, and their culture were not costumes they could take off at the end of the day and distance themselves from, right? So we have to face the backlash, all the jokes that people decide to make movies out of and to benefit off of. So in the bottom right-hand corner, we have Madame Butterfly. I did not play a clip, but that's because I didn't have a clip to play. I just only had stills. So Madame Butterfly, the main reason why I picked it out was because even though it was the first time Asian culture showed up on film, it was still played by a white actress. So this is Cho Sam, and she was played by Mary Pickford, another Caucasian actress. If y'all would like to answer the two questions, compare and contrast the two character scenes. What did you notice? What are the similarities and differences? For me, I noticed that, like I said, they preyed on very harmful stereotypes that were very popular then and are still very popular now, right? So they had the exaggerated accents, they have the confusion with certain American cultures, certain American practices, and they're very much seen as like very stunted people, right? So Long Dong Duck didn't understand almost anything that was happening at the table. And same thing with Mickey Rooney. He didn't know how to present himself in a way that was like acceptable to American culture. So those were the similarities, but differences would be that Mickey Rooney was more so very much out there, right? A very exaggerated character. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, although Long Dong Duck was exaggerated, he was more on the submissive side, more on the more weak and atypical side. So yeah, we can move on. I don't know how to view the chat box. It completely disappeared from me. So we'll just
out for you, but I don't see anything right now. But if anyone has answers to these questions, you are very welcome to put it on the chat, and then I will read it out loud for you all.
I don't know where it went. Like I have used Zoom the entire year, and now when I need it, oh, there it is. Okay, cool. Never mind. We'll move on. Cool. So next slide. So this is when we move on to more film-based, not really much TV-based, because TV at the time was not as popular as Hollywood film. So at the time, there was a thing called Haze Code, and it was established between 1930 to 1968. And it was an internal set of guidelines that major studios enforced before films could be distributed. So from like surface level, it's like, okay, it's a rule, like whatever. But beyond that, it included an array of requirements that were very indicative of society in America, including the prohibition of any sexual encounter between actors of different races. So with that restriction, hiring an Asian person as a lead actor in a film would rule out the character having any romantic or sexual relations with any other character unless they were also Asian. So obviously, like at the time, you can already assume that like, oh, if an Asian person was a main character, not a lot of people would go to the box office. And so that's when Hollywood would make the decision to make Asian characters be played by white actors just so they could have like the financial benefit and people will come to the box office and buy tickets. So this demonstrates how people of color were seen as tools for capitalist gain and costing for white characters to play, or white actors to play roles in films. So in the picture in the top right, that's Paul Mooney and Louise Rayner, who played Chinese characters in the movie The Good Earth in 1937. And it was a movie that follows the ups and downs of the lifestyle of Chinese farmers, right? And obviously Chinese farmers, you would assume that Chinese people would play in the movie. The only Chinese actors in the movie would be background characters. They did not have any speaking parts. They were just there as landscape. But the main characters, because they wanted movies to sell, they were casted as white people, which honestly sucks because like who could play a Chinese farmer better than the Chinese farmer, right? So this kind of just is indicative of the society of how people viewed Asian characters and how they were only meant to be costumes. So moving on to the 2000s and 2010s. So we see a very big shift in cinema. So I like to call this period reclaiming Hong Kong action cinema. We start to see a shift in focus. So Asian characters are starting to receive more fulfilling and complicated roles aside from sexually stunted men and submissive women. They become main characters with depth and fleshed out personalities that are more than just their Asianness. And by now there's clearly more time and effort invested into the authenticity and the genuineness as seen in the Ip Man franchise regarding casting, storyline, and even history. And then on the other hand of the spectrum, we see almost a reclaiming of the humor built from stereotypes. So we're going to be playing two clips, one from the Ip Man franchise and then one from Kung Fu Hustle, which also happens to be one of my comfort films.
廖師傅，
請。
請。冇事啊嘛？
冇事，冇事，再嚟。
咁再嚟㗎啦。中，中，中，中晒。成長啦，廖師傅。
多謝賜教，獲益良多。
彼此彼此啫。
呢次閉門切磋嘅事，葉師傅
絕對唔會同人講，放心。
Okay. So that's just one clip. I have yet to really watch the Ip Man series just because there's like a lot of fighting scenes that like it's a lot of body gore that I don't really like, but overall from the reviews that I've read about the Ip Man series, like it's very, I think there's 4 and I think there might be one more coming out, and it's very authentic to the Kung Fu culture. I don't want to say too much just because I don't know too much about that, but it's been very good. It's also directed by a Chinese director, so you know it's a little bit better than like a white person doing it or anyone else that's not Chinese. Okay, and then we have Kung Fu Hustle, which you will notice that is on the opposite side of the spectrum.
我哋要搬㗎，呢啲靚料嚟喎。啊，你都幾識貨㗎喎？呢啲料嘅藝術成分好高㗎。有幾高啊？3、4樓咁高啦。
最虎頭幫咪即係嫌命長，先打死呢3個冚家產，再揦埋個場嚟做雞竇。
唔好阻住睇嘢啦。唔好遮住我啊！
家人叫咗3隻嘢快啲走噶啦，又打到嚟添。
唔係啩？
係啊。有冇搞錯啊？喺度打交，打爛晒啲嘢，邊個賠？
對唔住，冇事冇事。
Yeah. Okay. So someone said in the chat about regarding the Haze Code. So kind of like Hollywood's version of anti-miscegenation laws, kind of. So miscegenation is basically like, oh my God, we don't want people to have mixed race babies. I wouldn't go as far to say the Haze Code wanted to stop that. I think it was just more of like taboo to see mixed race relationships. I forgot what the reasoning was. I didn't go that deep into Haze Code, but I think it was just more so like the idea that each race should stay within their own race. That kind of ties into miscegenation laws. I wouldn't go as far to say like it's the same version, but yes, very similar. That was a very good catch. Thank you for that, Francis. Okay, so moving back to reclaiming Hong Kong action cinema. So like I said, there's clearly more time and effort invested into the authenticity of these types of movies, especially with the Ip Man franchise. So you can see that there's far less stereotypes bought in these types of movies. Like they're talking in their own language as well. And it's not in a way to make fun of it. They're just genuinely having a conversation with their language. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, we have Kung Fu Hustle. Like it was goofy, right? Like they had all these random like over exaggerated fight scenes one of my favorite ones to date, but it still was directed by a Chinese director, and he was buying into like this thing that they call slapstick humor. So this is where Asian directors start to take up space at the table. So director Stephen Chow was the one that directed Kung Fu Hustle as well as Shaolin Soccer. They follow the same arc, so they're very much slapstick humor, like very silly, very goofy. They combine Kung Fu as well. And so like Kung Fu obviously is very like stereotypical to Chinese characters, but I feel like in these types of movies, and especially with these types of directors, they almost honor it, right? They don't really make fun of it. And then we also have Dr. Wilson Yip, director Wilson Yip, who directed Ip Man series. And then before The Joy Luck Club, who was directed by Wayne Wang, Asian characters were with depth in Hollywood were very few and far between. There were martial artists, often played by Bruce Lee, or they were caricatures like Long Duck Dong, as we had seen in 16 Candles, or they were in yellowface like Mr. Yunoishi. So the plot of this movie explores the complicated and dynamic relationships between immigrant parents and first-generation children. And so, like I said, we see a very big shift in movies having more fulfilling plots and fulfilling characters that could be, that are played by Asian actors. I really do suggest you watch The Joy Luck Club. It's very good. Also read it if you have the chance. It covers like 16 different stories regarding the like misunderstandings between first generation families and their immigrant parents. And I just really, really liked how they captured like very specific relationships that not everyone has the chance of experiencing. So while we have a lot of victories among one group of Asians, so that would be like the Chinese reclaiming of cinema, not everyone is experiencing a step forward at the same time. There is a show called Harry and Paul, a sitcom in the UK that faced a lot of controversy for this particular scene. It refers to a northerner in the UK and a Filipino maid that they had outsourced to come and clean up in their house. So I'm going to play it. I think it's a very short clip. I know I'm playing a lot of clips, but it's really hard to speak on these types of things without you actually getting to see them. So I'm going to play that.
Morning post here, I'll take that.
What, sure? What's going on here?
Not a lot, I'm afraid. Our chums up the road wanted to see if we could mate their Filipino maid with our northerner, but he's not having any of it. Come on, Clyde, mount her. You, present your rear.
Something might be happening.
Well, that's promising.
Oh, bugger.
Have I got any note, please, Mr. Lovelock?
All right, then, go in, you useless bloody northerner.
All right, so that was the basis of the clip. If anyone wants to speak up on what they witnessed or what they saw or what they thought about this particular clip, and while y'all ruminate on that, I will share a letter that I think it was someone from a Filipino news reporter had written this to the chairman of the BBC Trust, who approved of this particular clip. So they wrote, "Such portrayal and stereotyping of Filipino women as domestic workers and sex playthings is not only egregiously insulting to the Filipino community in the UK, it is also a blatant display of racial prejudice." So we see a different type of playing into stereotypes. This one is a lot more harmful than others because it sexualizes Filipino women who go out of their own home country to different countries for very noble reasons to make money and send them back home, right? And so now they play into this particular struggle and make it even worse by sexualizing them and boiling them down to just playthings of the so-called owners of these maids and these like housekeepers. So this one faced a lot of backlash. I don't think Harry and Paul are on, I'm pretty sure they're not on air anymore, but the Filipino community, they wrote a lot of letters and there was a lot of controversy regarding this one particular clip, which sucks because it's like how do you put this on the air and not realize how harmful and how like stupid it could possibly be and how ill-received it could have been. Okay, next slide.
Ooh,
So this
actually, before you go on, hi. I'm Sam. I am one of the other event planners for Empire in the Air. And again, Andrea, thank you so much for being here. I actually came across this clip. It was a Saturday Night Live sketch, and they were making fun of Rosetta Stone as a commercial, but from me being a Thai background, they were like doing all the languages except for when it came to learning Thai, they were just like, oh, learning how to say how much, obviously for the sex workers in Thailand. And actually the Thai embassy wrote back and was like, you need to take this off all platforms because that's like such a misrepresentation of Thailand and Thai culture. So yeah, I'm glad people are calling out media for all of this. And yeah, like it's so crazy that someone out there allowed shit like this to happen.
Thank you for sharing. Yes, yeah. I agree. It's very dangerous when people put out types of media like this because there are a lot of stupid people out there that will buy it and they'll be like, oh, so this is how they are and this is how I can treat them. And it's not like a taboo thing. Like a lot of people buy into media that they see, even though it's very exaggerated. They're like, oh, well, if this is how they're portrayed in TV, then this is probably how they're portrayed in real life. And it's like, no, touch some grass. They're not like this. And it's very harmful, very dangerous. And even though they face like backlash and they get all these letters and a lot of controversy and criticism, it's still seen today. Not as much and not so blatantly, but there's a lot of microaggressions that still hold the same effect, which sucks. And you can only really do so much because like people can be upset, people can write letters, people can be outwardly upset, and it's still like media to this day will still portray things in such a negative way. I think I have a chat out there. It's so hard to watch, especially knowing how difficult it can be for our own relatives that leave their home to make money and support their family in the Philippines. I 100% agree. Thank you, Brianne. Okay, so this is where we talk about miscasting. I'm sure many of you have experienced miscasting before. It's a very popular, unfortunately, a very popular thing that happens amongst Hollywood, and it's mainly to like promote money, basically, which sucks, but that's the basis of it. So this is where I would love for people to respond because I feel like they're very easy questions to answer and also very applicable. I'm sure one of you has experienced miscasting before, whether it be like in person or because you watched something. So in the chat or out loud, what is miscasting? Why do you think miscasting occurs? And what examples of miscasting can you name? And while y'all think about that, I'm going to talk about miscasting a little bit just in case you don't really know what it is. Miscasting is basically when there is a character out there who has a very specific type of actor that they're looking for. So that could be like, oh, someone who is blonde, someone who wears glasses, someone who's very shy, right? So that's the type of casting description that they have. And so the miscasting is when they just fill someone in because they feel a description. And so when it comes to Asian characters, so they're like, oh, we want like a short Asian girl. Miscasting occurs when they just take any short girl, even if she's not Asian, and put them into the character. No one is answering my question, so I will do it for you. So I just said what miscasting is, but why do you think miscasting occurs? Miscasting occurs because, like I had said, it's for capitalistic gain. So a lot of the times people won't watch a movie unless there is a big name actor or actress in it. And while I hate it, like sometimes movies just won't get the same traction unless they have a particular person playing the main character or they're just in it in general. So while the movie can be centered around Asian culture or any particular culture, they'll put Scarlett Johansson, right? Like she's a really big name. She's very pretty, very good actress, but she's not Asian. And she's not a person of color, but they tend to put her in people of color movies just because she's a big name. So that is an example of miscasting that I can name like straight off the top of my head. I'm sure you've seen it as well. But in the next slide, I will be talking about other popular examples. So another one of my favorite movies. Oops. Oh my God, wait, I lost the chat box. Hold on. Where did she go? Oh, here. Emma Stone. Yes, Emma Stone. I actually mentioned that in the next slide after this. So Kubo and the Two Strings happens to be another one of my favorite movies. I'm going to say that a lot because I have a lot of favorite movies. I can't decide which one's my favorite, to be honest. But Kubo and the Two Strings follows an Asian folklore plotline. And there are very little to none at all Asian voice actors. I believe I'll have time to play a couple of them. I won't play all of them just to save y'all some time, but Kubo and the Two Strings, if you're not aware, is a stop motion movie, very good. I think Scarlett Johansson is in this movie, believe it or not, but she also plays another Asian character, which I think is very sad to see because there are a lot of very good Asian voice actors out there that would do this movie, that would have done this movie justice, and they just so happen to not do the same. Matt Damon in the Great Wall movie, another good example that I also mentioned next. So To All the Boys I Loved Before, a side note, I really liked the first movie. The other ones sucked. But I would like to mention this because, yes, there are Asian women who play the three sisters. Unfortunately, the Asian sisters are supposed to play a half white, half Korean characters. Laura Jean is Vietnamese. Kitty, I believe, is half white, half Chinese. And then Margot is also partly Filipino, I believe. And so this is where we see people saying, okay, well, these are Asian characters. Let's just put an Asian person in it. It doesn't have to be the specific Asian cast that they're looking for. It's just because they fit the description, which sucks because like there are plenty of Korean actresses out there that would very much play the fulfilling role, but they just choose these ones because they look the part, although they are not exactly the part themselves. And then most notably Ghost in the Shell, played by Scarlett Johansson, my favorite person of color actress. Ghost in the Shell is based off of a Japanese manga. I have watched the original anime version of it, but Scarlett Johansson, for whatever reason, plays Major Motoko Kusanagi, who is supposed to be Japanese. I don't know why they chose her for whatever reason, because there are many Japanese actresses out there that would do this character justice as well, but they did. Let me see if I can play. Which one should I play? I'm gonna play the Kubo and the Two Strings just because I really want y'all to watch this movie afterwards.
I have crushed creatures who could fit this world on their fingernail. This victory brings me no honor. Imagine how you're going to feel when you lose. I felt loss only once. 11 years ago, I lost my sister. She fell in love with a fool and betrayed our father. She was an ungrateful coward. Who's the coward now?
I got it! I got it!
Beetle! What happened? Where's Kubo?
Get back down there! He's in trouble! I got it!
creatures down here fight so hard just to die another day. Down here, there are days worth fighting for. There is nothing down here worth anything. It's pathetic what happened to my sister. I looked up to her. She was so strong. And love made her weak. No. It made me stronger.
Yes, so Kubo and the Two Strings, Japanese folklore, a lot of samurai motifs. I looked up the main characters, the voice actors. Matthew McConaughey plays the beetle. Charlize Theron plays the monkey. All the Asian voice actors just happen to be all of the background characters, which sucks because like it's literally an Asian movie. Like, why? It's not even that hard to cast a voice actor of all things. George Takei is in it as well, which I love, but he's also a very small character as well. Okay, so next slide, we will be talking about whitewashing and white savior complexes or white savior tropes. So there is actually a very, very big difference between whitewashing and the white savior trope, but both exist due to a sense in Hollywood that audiences won't turn out unless they see very familiar Caucasian faces involved somewhere. So this is particularly strange given that the most sizable portion of the United States going to see movies would be Hispanics in particular. So it's like, why is the biggest turnout only when there are white characters in the movies? So a little bit of a description. Whitewashing is giving people of color characters to white actors, like for example, Scarlett Johansson in Ghost in the Shell. Someone mentioned Emma Stone, also Matt Damon in The Great Wall. So this is when like an Asian character is played by a white person. Pretty self-explanatory. The white savior trope is a little bit more complicated because in movies it presents itself in a way where the story itself is about the struggle of people of color, but it conveniently centers around the good deeds of a white character. So both concepts take away from people of color and their stories and focuses back onto white people and their actions and sidelining the voices that were meant to be amplified in the first place. So the examples that I have, two of them had already been mentioned, The Great Wall and Aloha. So the plight of protecting the Great Wall of China wouldn't have ever included a white man in the period it took place in. But seeing Matt Damon share the screen with strong Asian characters in The Great Wall could potentially help audiences who were hesitant to watch in the first place accept diversity on screen to be more welcoming of it, specifically when it comes to Asian characters. So director Zhang Yimou, who was like an Asian person to begin with, they had said that using Hollywood filmmaking to introduce Chinese culture, he wanted to introduce Chinese culture into Hollywood, right? But the only way it would be palatable to the major audiences was to include a big white name character in it. So that's where Matt Damon comes into place. So The Great Wall doesn't exactly serve to advance Asian American actors or roles. American audiences tend to view Asians on screen as an other, even if they are a main character. So in Hollywood blockbusters specifically, Asians are usually either immigrants like Jackie Chan, glorified extras like in X-Men Apocalypse, or erased and whitewashed, so like in Doctor Strange and Ghost in the Shell. Set in an entirely medieval and mythical China, The Great Wall won't exactly help advance Asian characters beyond those tropes given. So another example would be Birth of a Dragon, which is Bruce Lee's biopic, where the main character is sidelined by Billy Magnuson. I think he's like the older brother in Stranger Things. So while it was promo to focus on Bruce Lee's life and him training to be where he is now, the main character was actually sidelined by a white character specifically created for the movie. Like, he never even existed in Bruce Lee's actual life, which makes no sense, but also it's like, okay, you kind of expected it because The Birth of a Dragon, although Bruce Lee is very popular amongst Hollywood in general, like, it's very hard to get a specific demographic to watch unless there's a white character in it somehow. And then finally, Aloha. So Emma Watson plays a half Chinese, half Hawaiian character, Allison Ng. Her name itself is very Asian. So I don't know what they were thinking casting Emma Stone, of all people, to play this character. I don't have much to say about it. It's very self-explanatory. Emma Stone playing a Hawaiian character just makes no sense whatsoever. But Emma Stone is a very, very popular, very highly paid actress. So they were like, okay, well, if she's in it, we'll make money. And that was it. So currently, I would like to highlight the fact that we are moving forward in Hollywood and in cinema and TV shows in general. So I would consider this a step in the right direction. I will not be playing the clips, but I will be describing it. So Fresh Off the Boat, Superstore, and Slumdog Millionaire, I would like to consider these very big steps in the right direction. So Fresh Off the Boat, in short, is a TV show that follows a Korean-American family that moves to a very white suburban neighborhood, and it follows their assimilation in the process, but they don't undermine the Korean culture at all. I feel like it very much captures the Korean culture and the hardships of assimilating without making jokes about it. And the oldest son, it's funny because he's like very much into American culture. He loves hip hop and things like that, but he also doesn't undermine his own like heritage, and he learns to accept it. So he brings Korean food to school for lunch, and he protects his culture and heritage whenever people make jabs at it. And it's along the plot line of the show, you can watch like the characters learn to accept who they are and learn to embrace their skin color, the food that they eat, their last name, things like that. Superstore, actually, I do want to play just because I feel like it's a very universal understanding. Yes, Brienne says Superstore does an amazing job portraying Mateo and his undocumented status. I agree, so I will be playing that clip as well. But more importantly, I do want to mention Slumdog Millionaire because South Asians are still Asians, although they are very much forgotten. I hate that it is, but they are Asians. So Slumdog Millionaire, they had won an Academy Award for Best Picture, Original Music Score, Sound Mixing, Writing Adapted Screenplay, Best Director, and Best Film Editing. So what Slumdog's critics failed to understand is that India's creative influence is expanding far beyond the India market. So, and it's finding a very receptive global audience. So even though it's an entirely Indian cast shot in India based off of a book written by an Indian author, it received a wide amount of praise and a wide amount of like acceptance amongst like mainstream Hollywood, which is very new because we hadn't seen any South Asian movie receive such positive remarks in this way. So unfortunately, there is still a lack of representation of the South Asian culture in Hollywood. Thankfully, there are now shows like Parks and Rec, Never Have I Ever, movies like Harold and Kumar, and The Mini Project, but it's only been recently that there has been an uptick in authentic character building. So no longer does the audience see South Asian characters playing old whitewashed stereotypes of cab drivers, convenience store owners, or even geeky sidekicks. It has now become possible to reimagine how these actors, writers, and producers tell their stories. I actually read an article recently called No Longer Apu, Not Yet Beyond Mindy. So this perfectly sums up the whole like dichotomy of representation of South Asian characters is that in the 80s and 90s, the most recognizable character, South Asian culture character, was Apu in The Simpsons, and that was a very unmistakable accent and very racist caricature. So moving forward, we obviously have better representation, but it's usually centered around immigration and struggling to assimilate, which is an important story to highlight, but it's not the only story that South Asians have to tell, if that makes sense. So circling back a little bit to Superstore, I do want to show this clip just because I think it's very funny, but also it does good for the undocumented community as well.
Hey, look what I found over in menswear. A good old pair of American blue jeans pants.
Hey, looking good.
Good luck getting a pair of these babies in Manila.
You know, I think he means well. He's just, he doesn't understand.
It's not like I don't love America. I do. But it's not perfect. You guys are way too into brunch. I wish Asians were allowed to vote. And I don't really get the whole baseball.
Hold on a second. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I know. It's a democracy. One person, one vote. Oh, unless you're Asian American. Tell me why that is.
I don't know that I can. Are you? Mateo, you're an American citizen, right?
Or just because I'm Asian, I can't be a citizen?
No, I'm sorry. It's just that I've read about so many situations where parents bring their kids into the country illegally, and then, they don't even tell them that they're undocumented.
Believe me, I have plenty of documents. I went to the green card store personally with my grandmother.
The green card store?
Yeah, they sell green cards and knockoff handbags and bootleg Spider-Man DVDs. Grandma, naalala mo ba yung binili natin dati para sa akin? So yung green card na yon, counterfeit. So ibig sabihin hindi ako American citizen? At pwede natin pinanood ng Spider-Man legally sa Netflix? Glenn? This isn't easy for me to say, but I found out today that I am not an American. But I love this job.
Mateo, you're an American. And I'm Filipino. And everybody's everything. So it's like nobody's anything. And that's beautiful.
Well, okay.
Okay. Let me see that pen.
You stick yourself?
So bad. Right into the bone.
Do you want me to go get someone or?
Just be with me.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of like a comical representation of it, but later down in the series, Mateo's undocumented story arc is more explored and fleshed out, and it's a lot about acceptance and kind of like the legal process and the hardship behind being undocumented, which I really much appreciate, just because there's a lot of negative opinions about being an undocumented citizen, and like there's a lot of misunderstandings that come with it. So with something like that showing on TV, and there's like such a positive concept around it, I think it's just very much a step in the right direction as well. So another few examples of a step in the right direction. So these are some of my favorite movies that have come out recently. So Crazy Rich Asians, Bao, The Short, Float, Raya the Last Dragon, Minari, and Parasite. So another few would be questionably, but still an Asian movie, Mulan, with very accurate casting, The Half of It, Over the Moon, Never Have I Ever. So these movies were a step in the right direction because they had put a lot of time and effort and research into the authenticity of each character, into the costume design, into the story itself. So Crazy Rich Asians, like obviously a very diverse cast in terms of like the Asian casting. And it was also shot in, I forgot what country it was shot in, but it was very much accurate to what they were hoping to portray. Bao had made me cry within the first 30 seconds of the short. I think is very indicative of Asian American culture in terms of like leaving and personal responsibility towards your parents. Float was also very good because it was like a very outwardly Filipino father and son duo. Coming out soon, Wish Dragon. I have actually not heard of that. If you would like to describe it a little bit later, I would love to hear about it. But then Raya the Last Dragon had come out recently, and I had saw very good things about it. It was representative of Southeast Asian culture. Minari, who had won Best Foreign Language Film at the Golden Globes, and then obviously Parasite, which had won a whole slew of awards. Parasite was actually my favorite movie of 2020. And that was like when I watched it in February, so that was saying a lot. So these were all a step in the right direction, and personally is what I had seen. But then some other honorable mentions, The Farewell, which had won Awkwafina the first Asian Best Actress Award. I watched The Farewell so often. I think I've seen it 5 or so times, and I've cried every single time. I think it highlights family dynamics within Asian families very, very well, and also the dichotomy of being a first-generation Asian American, and the confusion between your culture and the culture back home, as well as Shadow and Bone. I had finished this show very recently. I also read the book too, and it has a very, very diverse cast. I was actually very shocked to see the types of characters that they had casted into the show. There was a half Chinese, half I think British main character. There was also a South Asian character. There was someone who was Thai as well, and they were all main characters, and their race wasn't made the main focus of their character, which I think is a very big problem within Hollywood cinema. It's like, okay, you're Asian, that is the biggest part of your personality. So in the future, oh, actually, Samantha, did you want to talk about what was it, Wish Dragon for a little bit? I haven't heard of that.
Well, it's a new movie. I actually don't know what it's about. I just know that it's an all Asian cast. John Cho, Constance Wu, Jimmy Wong. Yeah, but about a kid trying to go back to his childhood, like trying to find that. Sorry, I don't even know how to pitch the movie, but yeah, I'm super excited for this cast and this other animation, and it's going to be on Netflix coming this summer.
That's my list as well. But I'm actually going to be wrapping up my presentation, but for final remarks, I just wanted to say that the plot line for people of color always revolved around their racial identity, right? So if there was a gay person, it was about their hardship coming out to their parents, or if there was an immigrant, it was always about their coming to America story. Obviously, these stories are very important, right? They're very integral to our identity, whether you are like part of the LGBTQ community or you are first generation Asian American, they are very important to who we are now. But there's more to us than this particular identity, right? Like there's more to me than being half Vietnamese and half Filipino. There's more to me than being a first generation Asian American. We as a society are thankfully leaning into more three-dimensional stories and three-dimensional characters that capture who we are as people and what our culture entails without focusing on our otherness, so to say. So like I think we all know this, but it's very important to mention that we don't need white people or anyone else of that matter playing our faces or wearing our skin color as costumes because they simply fit the casting call. Like who fits our identity more than ourselves, right? So I think it's time, and I think that it's time for us to take up space, be heard, and be seen for who we really are. And hopefully in the future, we won't be playing like a small part in the big screen. We'll be taking up the entire screen itself. So yeah. Thank you so much for calling me to do this presentation. Like I said, I love talking about these topics. If you have any questions, compliments, or even just any comments in general, those are my contact links. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and you can also email me as well. Hit me up, say hi. If you have a movie recommendation, please send them my way. Like I love spending my time watching movies. I'm looking at the chat one more time. Marvel's releasing a movie with Simu Liu. Yes, he is. I am so excited for that as well. I think he's also very excited as well. I've seen many posts about it. I'm excited to see what he can do. Kim Convenience is also a very good show. But yes, thank you so much. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns you want to say now, please do so. Otherwise, I will hand it back to Kat.
Cool. Hello, everyone. Hi again. Well, wow. Definitely all the films that you chose were amazing, even if they are stereotypical, but it was very fun, yet still very educational. So thank you so much, Andrea, for this impactful workshop. So hope you all were able to notice any of these stereotypes that happened today or even in the past. Notice what's accurate and share it with all your friends. So before we end, tomorrow we'll still continue on with our monthly event series with our Self-Care Sunday hosted by one of our very own models, Danny from Trace Style, from 11:30 to 1:30 p.m. If you can make it, that'd be great. RSVP on the same link that you did before. And so we're gonna learn how to style with intention just in time for the summer. So hope to see you all there. And before we end, I would like to ask you all to take a quick picture. If you're not comfortable showing yourselves, it's okay, but I highly encourage it. But yes, yay! All right. I'll give it like 2 more seconds. If not, that's cool. We'll take a quick screenshot. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Thank you again, Andrea, and everyone else. Have a great rest of your day.